안녕하세요. 다들 즐거운 크리스마스 연휴 보내셨나요? 새해 복 많이 받으시기 바라겠습니다. 자, 작년에 테슬라, 엔비디아만큼이나 큰 화제가 되고 많은 관심을 집중시킨 투자 자산이 비트코인이라고 생각을 합니다. 자, 며칠 있으면 블랙록의 비트코인 ETF가 승리에 나게 될지 리젝을 당하게 될지 알게 될 건데요. 많은 투자자들이 비트코인 ETF가 승인될 거라는 희망을 가지고 있고 비트코인 가격에 이미 그 희망이 반영이 되어 있다고 생각을 합니다. 저는 개인적으로 비트코인 ETF가 승인이 나든 리젝을 당하든 간에 비트코인 가격에 한 번 이상의 풀백은 올 거라고 생각을 하는데요. 일단 만약에 블랙록의 비트코인 ETF를 SEC가 승인하지 않는다면 비트코인 가격이 크게 내려갈 거라고 생각을 하고요. 반대로 만약에 블랙록의 비트코인 ETF가 승인이 난다고 해도 며칠간 아주 크게 오를 수는 있지만 제 개인적인 생각과 경험으로는 헤지펀드들이 이렇게 크게 오른 비트코인을 팔아서 수익을 챙김으로써 ETF가 승인이 난다고 해도 비트코인 가격에 풀백이 오지 않을까 생각을 합니다. 물론 제 개인적인 생각이기 때문에 100% 틀릴 수도 있으니 참고만 하시기 바라겠습니다. 자, 2024년에는 비트코인 ETF와 함께 4년에 한 번씩 일어나는 비트코인 헬빙 이벤트가 일어나는 해이기 때문에 올해 제 채널의 첫 영상으로 비트코인 전문가이자 이 분야에 10년 이상 투자를 했고 몸을 담아온 데다가 캐나다에서 최초로 가상화폐 거래소를 만들고 미국에서 온라인상으로 비트코인 매수 매도를 가능하게 만든 Virtual Bitcoin ATM인 코인스트림의 창업자인 마이클 보글을 모셔서 그분의 생각과 인사이트 그리고 2024년에 비트코인의 전망을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 인터뷰가 역시나 생각보다 길어져서 2부로 나눠서 영상을 편집하고 번역을 했는데요. 여러분들께서 2024년에 가상화폐나 가상화폐 관련된 주식들에 투자를 하는 데 있어서 도움이 되었으면 하는 바람입니다. 자, 그러면 디스클레이머만 듣고 영상 바로 보도록 하겠습니다. 제가 만든 컨텐츠들은 어디까지나 정보 전달을 위한 영상들이기 때문에 절대 영상만 보시고 주식들을 매도하지 마시기 바라고요. 본인 스스로 반드시 리서치를 더 하신 다음에 판단을 내리시기 바라겠습니다.
Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great Christmas holiday week and also a happy new year and are now ready again for the market in 2024. Now, since Bitcoin's price has more than doubled from under 20K per coin in the beginning of 2023 to over 44K a coin, and also since the SEC is planning to decide whether they will approve BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF this month, there has been so much optimism in the crypto space and seems like the optimism has already been priced in the Bitcoin price, along with stocks involved with Bitcoin, such as Coinbase and Hive Digital Technology. So I wanted to start this year sharing important insights and information on Bitcoin and the crypto market from one of the top leaders in the crypto space, Michael Vogel, who has founded the cryptocurrency exchange Netcoin in Canada and also founded CoinStream in the US, which is a virtual version of a Bitcoin ATM. Also with Michael's passion and entrepreneurship, Michael has founded Encore Ventures as well. So Michael, I really want to thank you very much again for being a guest on my channel. And I'm very excited to hear what you see in the crypto market and Bitcoin, especially in 2024.
Awesome. Great to be back, Andrew. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Like we said last time, there's never a dull day in crypto world.
First of all, I think many investors that are watching this interview may have the same question in their mind and would be interested to hear, based on your experience, do you think that the Bitcoin rally we are seeing now is actually a start of another parabolic cycle? Or do you think it may just be a bull trap based on the expectation of the BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF being approved by the SEC and can maybe have a huge pullback in the first half of 2024?
That's a great question. I think the average crypto trader is probably saying, I hope this is not the end. I hope we keep going up. But I heard you mention a good point at the beginning, whether or not the price of Bitcoin has already kind of baked in or taken into consideration the ETF news. And I think we'll definitely see this first quarter in 2024 will be something to witness. I think definitely everyone at this point knows about the ETF. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a good rally that's been baked into the price. But I think the mechanics of what happens next with ETF approvals, how these ETFs go online, what kind of volumes they see, what kind of capital inflows, right? That's when it kind of gets down to the nitty gritty. Because Bitcoin is, it does have a substantial market cap, but I mean, it's very small compared to the entirety of the stock market, let's say, right? And so for these Bitcoin ETFs to actually acquire Bitcoin, they have to do that through open markets or, they have to find liquidity providers. And so we may see basically a shock to the system as these ETFs try to basically onboard and add Bitcoin to their portfolios. So we may see another wave going forward as volume increases and as traction takes hold for these ETFs. So yeah, on the one hand, 2023, definitely exuberance about what's coming. PayPal ETF and all this interesting news. 2024, we may see more of demand shock triggering the price to go up.
I actually have two questions based on what you just said. Are you saying that right now the price of the Bitcoin that is going up is based on the expectation that we will have a Bitcoin ETF approved? And you're saying that if that gets approved, there's going to be a much higher volume of assets coming into the crypto space. So we're going to even see a higher or a much more higher move on the Bitcoin price.
I believe so. So definitely on the retail side, the word's out, the secret's out. By the time someone's watching this video, maybe later in 2024, those ETFs may have already been approved. I think by all estimates, this is probably a foregone conclusion that we'll have some type of or multiple ETF products throughout 2024. And there's deadlines coming up in January and subsequent months of other ETFs that are in progress. But the general feeling is once one or two are approved, the SEC may actually just blanket approve all ETF applications at the same time and just create one single approval. We'll see what happens. And I guess dialing down to answer your question about each individual ETF, definitely the way ETF products work is, as buy orders and people come in to purchase stock in the ETF, it obviously has to be counterbalanced with actual Bitcoin holdings in reserve. And so if there is that demand shock to the system, then these ETFs will have to acquire Bitcoin. And like I said, they'll either have to buy it through open markets, Coinbase, Binance, etc., or through sort of whale traders or OTC providers. But regardless, the coins have to come from somewhere. And I think the latest stats show that through retail exchanges like Coinbase, it's really only kind of a few million of Bitcoins that are really free trading and available. So when Bitcoin's market cap is low, that's obviously a bit of a challenge. But as the price of Bitcoin goes up, it requires fewer Bitcoins per dollar, if that makes sense, to actually onboard this currency into the ETF.
And the other question that I had is, based on your experience, there has been a lot of attempts to launch or file a Bitcoin ETF in the past. But do you think that there is a high possibility that, on the 10th of January, the SEC will approve this Bitcoin ETF, or in 2024? If that's the case, is there a reason why you think this time or this year it's different and there might be a higher possibility that these Bitcoin ETFs might actually get approved?
There's definitely a consensus that enough time has passed. The general feeling is sort of enough is enough. There sort of aren't enough tangible reasons to delay an application further. If you were to ask, crypto analysts and those in the industry, the general feeling is probably somewhere around 90% likelihood of approval. But, as with anything government related, who knows? The SEC has the ultimate choice as to whether it gets approved. Around the world, there are other ETF products. In Canada, for example, and other countries, there are smaller ETF products that are already in existence. And so for the SEC to deny kind of in the long term seems pretty unlikely. And an approval is definitely likely in either January or Q1 of 2024.
I hear a lot of people very positive on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies now. And, with the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF coming up, I think there's a lot of optimism, as I said. But as you may know, there are many well-known investors, like especially Warren Buffett, that still say negative things about Bitcoin and say it's a scam and it will eventually go to zero. But do you think, I'm pretty sure you do, but do you think Bitcoin is here to stay in the future? And if so, do you see the value of Bitcoin as the digital version of gold and only have a store of value? Or do you actually see some use cases for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in the future? And have you experienced any of these actual use cases that you would love to share?
So for your first point about Bitcoin going to zero, there's two scenarios. One where Bitcoin, let's say, becomes hyper politicized. Bitcoin kind of has this negative narrative and falls out of favor. That could happen. That scenario would have to involve the same kind of scenario where, like, let's say Google or Apple fell out of favor, in my opinion, right? Because at this point, Bitcoin has been around for over a decade, and Bitcoin fundamentally itself hasn't been hacked. There have obviously been notable exchanges and fraudulent incidents, but Bitcoin itself robust and lasted this long. So I don't see any technical reason why it wouldn't survive. But yeah, it's obviously susceptible to political pressures and other pressures, as with any kind of new product. But I think in the long term, yeah, the most obvious use case for Bitcoin is definitely the store of value. Definitely, if we kind of go full circle and look to BlackRock and these big Wall Street entrants, they're doing their own due diligence, and they're not going to put their name behind a product that is going to be legislated out of existence. So I think maybe about 5 to 10 years ago, there was definitely serious threat, right? A lot of people were wondering, hey, is Bitcoin going to be banned in my country this year? Will I just not be able to use Bitcoin? And that was a very valid concern. Even though there are active opponents of Bitcoin, I don't think those arguments have a lot of weight behind them, and I think kind of as time goes on, those sort of naysayers will just have to kind of step aside. I'm not saying that regulation is a bad thing. Regulation is great, and the SEC being involved in regulating an ETF product, that's great as well. But we have to look at being progressive in the long term. Bitcoin is a newer technology. We can kind of make some parallels with the internet being a newer technology, in the early 90s. If the internet had been overregulated in its early days, it wouldn't have been allowed to flourish. And the same argument can be made for Bitcoin. If it is or was overregulated, then it wouldn't be allowed to flourish. And so Bitcoin has so many positives around the world. Countries where they have issues with inflation and access to banking, Bitcoin is a very, very real and tangible alternative already being used today. So we've talked about Argentina as a prime example, other parts of Central America and around the world. Ukraine is another great example. So its utility is definitely obvious to me in 2024, and I think it'll continue.
So based on the last parabolic cycles of Bitcoin, and especially with the Bitcoin halving event happening this year, would you be surprised if Bitcoin went over 6 digits per coin during this cycle? And I know it's really hard to predict, but do you actually have an expectation on how high Bitcoin may go at the peak of this cycle, if it happens?
조금이라도 도움이 되셨다면 주위 분들과 나눠주셨으면 너무 고맙겠고요. 구독과 라이크를 해주시면 더욱 감사하겠습니다.